Hey there, mental health explorers. Ready to unlock some seriously practical tools for a happier, more resilient you?
Yeah.
We're diving deep into Dr. Julie Smith's Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before?
Awesome.
It's like she's bottled up years of therapy wisdom just for you.
And the best part is Dr. Smith doesn't just talk the talk. She gives you actionable strategies, almost like a workout routine for your mind.
Oh, I like that.
We're talking about building those mental muscles so you can handle whatever life throws your way.
Okay, let's jump right into it. One of the things that really hit home for me was Dr. Smith's take on low mood.
Okay.
We often think of it as just feeling sad,
Right.
but she digs way deeper than that, right?
Absolutely. She shows how low mood is this whole interconnected system of your body, your thoughts, even your actions, all playing off each other. It's not just in your head.
That makes so much sense. It's like when you're feeling physically drained, it's way harder to think positive thoughts.
Right.
And then you isolate yourself, which just makes the whole thing worse.
It becomes a vicious cycle fueled by what Dr. Smith calls thought biases. These are like mental shortcuts that, while often useful, can really trip us up when we're feeling down.
Thought biases.
Ugh.
Okay, that sounds a bit jargony. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you have a quiet coffee date with a friend and they seem a little distant. Mind reading a common thought bias might lead you to assume they're upset with you,
Wow.
when really they might just be having a stressful day.
Oh, wow. I'm totally guilty of that. So how do we break free from these sneaky thought traps?
Dr. Smith gives us a brilliant tool called the cross-sectional formulation.
Okay.
Think of it like a mood map. You literally write down your thoughts, feelings, actions, and any physical sensations you're experiencing.
So instead of feeling lost in the fog of low mood, you can actually see the different elements at play.
Exactly. And once you see them, you can start to identify the levers you can control.
Right.
Maybe you can't just snap your fingers and change a thought, but you can choose to go for a walk, which then influences your body and energy levels.
It's about taking back the driver's seat.
Yes.
Now, speaking of things we can control, Dr. Smith talks a lot about building mental fitness, almost like going to the gym for your mind, right?
Exactly. And just like physical fitness, mental fitness requires consistent effort. And two of the most effective exercises Dr. Smith recommends are mindfulness and gratitude.
Now, I've heard these terms thrown around a lot, but what do they actually look like in practice?
Yeah.
What's one tangible thing someone can do today to start building those mental muscles?
One of the simplest yet most powerful exercises Dr. Smith suggests is a daily gratitude practice. Spend just a few minutes each day writing down 3 things you're grateful for.
Okay.
It could be as grand as your health or as simple as a sunny day.
Okay, that's doable. But how does simply writing things down actually help?
Our brains have a negativity bias. We're wired to focus on threats and problems.
Right.
By intentionally shifting our attention to what's good, even if it feels small, we're essentially rewiring our brains to be more positive over time.
It's like training your mind to see the good stuff, kind of like upgrading from blurry vision to HD.
I like that analogy. And the beauty is these mental workouts don't require any special equipment or hours of your time.
Right.
You can even practice gratitude while stuck in traffic.
Now, speaking of challenges,
Mm-hmm.
even with regular mental workouts, we all have those days where our mood just dips, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does Dr. Smith suggest for turning those bad days around?
Well, first, she emphasizes the importance of aiming for progress, not perfection. Especially when you're feeling down, it's easy to get caught up in all or nothing thinking.
I'm so guilty of that. If I can't do a full workout, I end up doing nothing at all.
It's a common trap.
Yeah.
But Dr. Smith reminds us that even small positive actions can create a ripple effect.
Okay.
One of the tools she introduces is the hot cross bun formulation,
Oh.
a visual way to analyze and shift your mood.
Okay, I have to admit, when I first read that, I was picturing delicious pastries and I was very confused. How does a hot cross bun relate to mental health?
Well, picture the bun itself. Each section represents an aspect of your current state, your thoughts, feelings, actions, and physical sensations.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. Go on.
Let's say you're feeling low because you're stuck in a traffic jam and your thoughts are spiraling into, I'm never going to get anything done mode.
Yeah.
That might be one quadrant of your bun.
So what do? Eat the negative parts.
Haha, not quite. But you can think about swapping out those ingredients. Instead of dwelling on the traffic, maybe you use that time to listen to a podcast you've been meaning to check out. That's you actively changing the action quadrant of your hot cross bun.
Okay, that's actually a really practical way to look at it.
It is.
I'm starting to see how this book is less about vague self-help and more about giving you actual tools to use.
That's exactly it. And Dr. Smith is all about building those healthy habits,
Yeah.
those basic mental hygiene practices that we often overlook. She compares neglecting them to playing a football match without any defense.
Well, that's a good one. Even with the best offense, you're going to get crushed without a solid defense. What are some of those mental defense basics she emphasizes?
Things we know we should do, but often don't prioritize: sleep, exercise, and meaningful connection with others.
Okay, so not exactly groundbreaking stuff, but why does she call them out specifically? What's her unique take?
It's not just about knowing, it's about understanding the why behind it. For example, she dives into the science of how even a small improvement in sleep quality can significantly impact our mood and resilience.
So instead of aiming for perfect 8-hour nights, maybe it's about making one small change, like dimming the lights an hour before bed.
Exactly. It's those small, consistent actions that make a world of difference in the long run.
Right.
And she emphasizes finding what works for you. Maybe intense gym sessions aren't your thing, but you love dancing around your living room.
It's about finding the joy in the movement. Now, all of this sounds great, but what about motivation? We all have those days where even getting off the couch feels impossible.
We often think of motivation as this magical thing that we either have or don't have. But Dr. Smith completely debunks that myth.
Okay, tell me more, because I'm always looking for a motivation boost.
She explains that motivation isn't this fixed personality trait. It's a feeling that naturally fluctuates, and we can actually learn to cultivate it.
So instead of waiting for motivation to strike, we can actually create it. I'm intrigued. How do we actually do that?
One strategy she highlights is the power of starting small. Instead of overwhelming yourself with a massive goal, break it down into tiny, achievable steps. Let's say your goal is to write a book. Instead of focusing on the massive task of writing a whole book, start by setting a tiny goal like writing for just 5 minutes a day.
5 minutes. That feels totally doable.
Exactly. And the key is to celebrate those small wins. Instead of brushing it off like it's nothing, acknowledge your effort and progress. Those little boosts of positive reinforcement can go a long way.
So it's about tricking your brain into enjoying the process one tiny step at a time.
Precisely.
Mhm.
And as you experience those small wins, you build momentum and confidence, which fuels even more motivation. It's a beautiful upward spiral.
I love that. Now, beyond those everyday dips in motivation, what about navigating those bigger life challenges?
Yeah.
I'm thinking grief, self-doubt, relationships, struggles, things that can really knock us off balance. What insights does Dr. Smith offer in these areas?
Well, one of the things I appreciate most about Dr. Smith's approach is her emphasis on self-compassion.
Okay.
Especially when we're facing difficult emotions or situations, it's easy to fall into self-criticism.
Yeah.
But she reminds us that being kind to ourselves is essential for healing and growth.
Self-compassion. That sounds simple enough, but sometimes it feels really hard to actually do. Any tips for putting that into practice?
One helpful exercise Dr. Smith suggests is to imagine you're talking to a close friend who's going through a tough time. What would you say to them? How would you offer support and encouragement?
I'd probably tell them to be kind to themselves, that they're doing the best they can. Oh, I see where you're going with this. We're often much more compassionate to others than we are to ourselves.
Exactly. So often we become our own harshest critics, replaying mistakes in our heads or focusing on our perceived flaws.
Right.
Dr. Smith encourages us to challenge those negative self-talk patterns and treat ourselves with the same understanding and kindness that we would offer to someone we care about.
It's like we need to become our own best friend. Now, you mentioned grief earlier. Dr. Smith has a very specific way of looking at grief that really resonated with me.
Yeah,
Can you talk a bit about that?
of course. One of the most powerful insights Dr. Smith offers is that grief isn't something to get over or move on from quickly. It's a natural human response to loss, and it's important to allow ourselves to feel those emotions fully without judgment.
So it's not about rushing the healing process. It's about honoring our own unique experience of grief.
Exactly. And she reminds us that there's no right or wrong way to grieve. Some people find solace in talking about their loss, while others prefer to process their emotions more privately. It's about finding what feels right for you.
It's interesting because we often hear that talking about your feelings is crucial for processing grief.
Right.
While that's true for some, Dr. Smith emphasizes that the most important thing is to listen to your own needs and allow yourself to grieve in a way that feels authentic to you.
Precisely. Trying to force yourself to grieve a certain way can actually hinder the healing process.
It's about giving yourself permission to feel whatever you're feeling without judgment or pressure to get over it according to someone else's timeline.
Absolutely. And she also talks about the importance of seeking support when we need it, whether it's from a therapist, a support group, or trusted friends and family. Having a safe space to process our emotions can make a world of difference.
It's interesting that you bring up support because I think that ties in nicely with Dr. Smith's insights on relationships.
Yeah.
She dedicates a significant portion of the book to exploring how our connections with others impact our well-being.
Absolutely. And one of the things she emphasizes is that relationships, while incredibly rewarding,
Yeah.
can also be challenging at times.
Which makes sense, right? We're all complex individuals with our own needs, desires, and communication styles. It's no wonder that bumps in the road are inevitable.
Exactly. And that's where Dr. Smith's insights on attachment styles can be incredibly helpful.
Okay, attachment styles. I'll admit, when I first heard about this concept, it sounded a bit like something out of a psychology textbook.
Right.
Can you break it down for us in a way that's easy to grasp?
Of course. Essentially, our attachment style refers to the way we learn to relate to caregivers in our early childhood, and these patterns often carry over into our adult relationships.
Okay.
Dr. Smith explains that there are three main attachment styles: secure, anxious, and avoidant.
And how do these styles actually play out in relationships?
Well, someone with a secure attachment style generally feels comfortable with intimacy and interdependence. They're able to trust their partners and don't tend to fear abandonment.
That sounds pretty ideal.
It is, but it's important to remember that not everyone develops a secure attachment style in childhood.
Right.
Someone with an anxious attachment style, on the other hand, might worry about their partner's love or availability. They might seek constant reassurance or feel threatened by their partner's independence.
And what about the avoidant attachment style?
People with an avoidant attachment style often equate intimacy with a loss of independence.
Okay.
They might struggle to express their emotions or pull away when a relationship starts to feel too close for comfort.
It's fascinating how these early childhood experiences can have such a profound impact on our adult relationships.
It really is. And the good news is that just because we developed a certain attachment style in childhood doesn't mean we're stuck with it forever.
Right.
With awareness and effort, we can learn to challenge those ingrained patterns and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
So understanding our own attachment style and potentially our partners can be a game changer in terms of communication and building stronger connections.
Exactly. It's like having a secret decoder ring for relationships.
I love that analogy. It's about recognizing that sometimes those relationship challenges aren't personal attacks or signs that we're incompatible. They might simply be reflections of our individual attachment styles and the ways we've learned to navigate closeness and connection.
Exactly. And once we have that awareness, we can start to communicate our needs more effectively and approach challenges with greater empathy and understanding.
It's all about bridging that gap between our individual experiences and creating a shared space of love and support. Now, speaking of support, one of the things that really struck me about Dr. Smith's work is her emphasis on finding meaning and purpose in life,
Yeah.
even amidst challenges. It's not just about feeling happy all the time, is it?
Not at all. In fact, she challenges this very idea that happiness is the ultimate goal. Instead, she suggests that true fulfillment comes from aligning our lives with our values, even when it's hard.
Okay, so how do we actually figure out what our values are? I feel like that's something people talk about, but no one ever really explains how to do it.
Well, Dr. Smith offers some really helpful exercises in the book.
Okay.
But one simple yet powerful question she suggests asking yourself is this: what matters most to you in life?
What matters most? That's a big one. I'd say connection, authenticity, creativity.
You see, you're already tapping into those core values.
Yeah.
And once you have a clearer sense of what truly matters to you, you can start making choices that align with those values, even when it's difficult.
So it's less about chasing fleeting moments of happiness and more about building a life that feels meaningful and authentic, even if it includes challenges and setbacks along the way.
Exactly. And that's where all of these tools we've been discussing, the mental fitness practices, the self-compassion, the relationship skills, all come together to support us in living those values, even when life throws us curveballs.
It sounds like living in alignment with our values gives us a kind of inner compass,
Right.
guiding us through those inevitable storms.
Yeah.
But what about those times when the storm is stress? I feel like we talk about stress as this bad thing we need to avoid at all costs. But Dr. Smith offers a different perspective, doesn't she?
You're right, she does. Dr. Smith emphasizes that stress in itself isn't inherently bad. In fact, it can be a powerful motivator, helping us to focus our energy and rise to challenges.
Okay.
Think about athletes before a big competition.
Right.
They're feeling the pressure, but they're also channeling that energy into performing at their best.
So it's not about eliminating stress altogether,
Right.
because let's face it, that's pretty impossible in today's world.
Yeah.
It's more about learning how to manage it effectively.
Exactly. It's about recognizing when stress is working for us,
Okay.
like giving us that extra push to meet a deadline. And when it's tipping over into that overwhelming chronic stress, that can take a toll on our well-being.
So what are some practical ways we can manage stress, especially when we're in those high-pressure situations that we can't always avoid?
Hmm.
I'm thinking job interviews, public speaking.
Sure.
Those moments where your heart starts racing and your palms get sweaty.
Well, one strategy Dr. Smith suggests is the power of reframing. Instead of viewing that upcoming presentation as a terrifying ordeal,
Right.
try reframing it as an exciting opportunity to share your ideas with the world.
So it's about shifting our perspective, looking for that silver lining, even amidst the potential for stress.
Precisely. And another key tip is to focus on what you can control rather than getting caught up in those what-if scenarios that can spiral into anxiety.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah.
Any tips for actually getting out of that worry spiral?
Absolutely. One technique Dr. Smith suggests is to take a moment to simply notice those anxious thoughts without judgment. Imagine them like clouds passing by in the sky. You can acknowledge their presence without getting swept up in their storm.
That's like saying, hey, anxiety, I see you there, but I'm not going to let you run the show today.
Exactly. And alongside those in-the-moment coping strategies, Dr. Smith emphasizes the importance of building those foundational habits that bolster our resilience to stress in the long term.
You're talking about those mental defenses we talked about earlier, sleep, exercise, connection.
Exactly. Because when we prioritize those basic needs, we're essentially equipping our minds and bodies with the resources they need to navigate challenges more effectively.
It's like having a well-stocked emergency kit.
Mm-hmm.
You hope you'll never need it, but when those stressful situations inevitably arise, you're prepared.
I love that analogy. And speaking of being prepared, one of the most valuable takeaways from Dr. Smith's book is this. It's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
That's so important. We often put so much pressure on ourselves to have it all figured out.
Right.
But the reality is life is messy, and we're all learning and growing as we go.
Absolutely. And that's where self-compassion comes in again, right? Being kind to ourselves, especially when we make mistakes or face setbacks, is crucial for resilience and growth.
It's about giving ourselves permission to be human imperfections and all.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. One of the most powerful messages Dr. Smith conveys is the importance of seeking support when we need it.
Right.
Whether it's from a therapist, a trusted friend or family member, or even a supportive online community.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to go it alone. There are people who care about us and want to help, and sometimes just reaching out and sharing our struggles can make a world of difference.
It takes courage to ask for help, but it's often the bravest and most important step we can take on our journey toward greater well-being.
So to wrap things up, I think Dr. Smith's book offers this incredible toolbox
Yeah.
filled with practical strategies and insights that we can use to navigate the ups and downs of life.
Right.
It's not about becoming some idealized version of ourselves.
Right.
It's about building a more resilient, compassionate, and fulfilling life one step at a time.
Beautifully said. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning of your exploration. Keep experimenting with the tools and techniques that resonate with you.
Yeah.
And most importantly, be kind to yourself along the way.
If there's one thing we want you to take away from this deep dive, it's this. You have the power within you to cultivate a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. As you move forward, consider this. Instead of just trying to fix your emotions, what if you approach them with curiosity? What if those seemingly negative emotions were actually valuable messengers, guiding you toward greater self-awareness and growth? Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the journey.